Nigerians are making positive headlines globally. The Nigerian head of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, has been named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people of the year 2021. Since becoming the Director General of the WTO in March, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala has been hailed for the groundbreaking nature of her appointment to the role as the first woman and the first African to assume the position. Congratulatory messages. We are proud. Friend of the house.
And of course she made the list. I mean, who else would? I mean, quite frankly, this is hardly surprising, even though obviously it's most exciting. And, you know, the Time Most Influential list, Nigerians are no stranger to that list, I'm very proud to say. I'd say almost every year we're represented there, as we ought to be. So, Dr. NOI, as she's fondly called here in Nigeria, was under the leaders category. So they have the icons, the titans, the innovators, the artists, and the leaders, and she was a leader. But what makes hers even more special, as far as I'm concerned, is that every year, this Time magazine listicle, which is a list and that comes with an article, so that's why it's called a listicle. It's usually, those nominated are usually profiled by somebody in their field who admires them, or somebody who has a close relationship with them, somebody who can really do them justice. But who they chose to profile our NOI is somebody else who, well, a couple who was also recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in the icons category, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So that's who they got to profile her, which also makes it extremely special. That I do not recall happening very often. And going down the list this year, even people like Britney Spears are not profiled by other people on the influential list. So she is, I'm sorry to say, top tier, even in the top 100. She's in the top 1% as far as I'm concerned. So this is really great. And also what she's been profiled for is significant. Her work in vaccine equity, the issue of our time, the defining issue right now. Unfortunately, we are living through a pandemic, but there are people, there are heroes emerging within this horrific situation that we find ourselves in, and she is one of those heroes. It's important to me that she's Black because of the massive vaccine hesitancy amongst people of our race, and also that she's a woman. It's so important, and that she's trusted. And this is going to further outline the fact that reputation, integrity is everything. A woman of her stature, being so closely aligned with the fight to vaccinate the world, is going to help a lot of people with their vaccine hesitancy because she has that credibility. This is great on so many levels. Congratulations to her.
All right, Dr. Bati.
Well, congratulations to Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, and congratulations also to Nigeria. What is particularly special about this is that she not only made the list, the Time magazine 100 most influential people in the world, she made the cover. It's not always that people make the cover, considering that this is a list that is compiled annually by Time magazine to draw attention to the people who have made the greatest impact on humanity in terms of ideas, in terms of innovation, in terms of the example that they've been able to set. And out of all of that is our own Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, that is on the cover of Time magazine. I don't know how many Nigerians in the next 100 years will make it to that cover, but you never know. But now we have one of our own being celebrated, and there's no doubt that she's, you know, an achiever. So what are the issues? One, in terms of personal accomplishments, this is a woman who has been managing director of the World Bank, actively involved in poverty reduction strategies in Africa. This is a woman who has been Minister of Finance in Nigeria from about 2003 to 2006. Briefly within that period, she was also Minister of Foreign Affairs. She also returned 2011 to 2015 as Supervising Minister of, of the Nigerian economy, and as also Minister of Finance. And in all of these categories, she's been able to distinguish herself. On the international scale, she's on the board, or she was on the board of Twitter. She was also on the board of the Gavi Alliance, which is the COVID, vaccine alliance trying to save the world. And then, of course, spectacularly, she emerged, despite the initial resistance of the Trump administration, as the first African and the first woman to become the Director General of the World Trade Organization. And under our watch, within the last year or so, she's been in the forefront of trying to help to save the world. She's been one of the major champions of vaccine equity, a phrase that has become very popular now. Long before Tedros Ghebreyesus, the WHO Director General, made the point, Ngozi Okonjo Iweala has been saying that, look, nobody is safe except everyone is safe. And it's important that, in the tribute, in the profile by the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex, they refer to this, that this is a woman who has been a champion for global good, for the common good, for vaccine equity. And there was a phrase in that tribute by the royals that this is a woman who knows how to get things done. And since she got to the WTO, we've seen her more or less hitting the ground running. Right from day one, she set an agenda in terms of the need to reform the WTO, in terms of the need for the global community to work together in concert. So for every African, this is again another major achievement, by Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala. Another diamond, President Buhari talked about the diamonds of Nigeria. And this is another diamond that is shining very brightly on the international stage. For her, at a personal level, this is truly historic. But beyond all of that, it's also about what she represents. Not Africanism, not womanism, but the fact that, she's become a major symbol for the girl child in Africa. In many parts of Africa, the girl child is still discriminated against. And I usually refer people to, Buchi Emechita's The Slave Girl, and also Sisi Dangereba's nervous conditions, in terms of the kind of discrimination that women face in African communities. Yeah, there's another book by Buchi Emechita, The Bride Price. So all of this, contextualize the plight of the woman in Africa. But in spite of all of that, we see people like Okonjo Iweala giving the average Nigerian woman hope that you can break the ceiling, you can shatter the ceiling, not just in your country, but globally. And so we're very proud of her. And I'd like to congratulate the editors of Times Magazine for choosing that iconic figure, iconic picture. You can see her, she's also a fashion icon, promoting the African fabric. And they couldn't have chosen a better picture, even if there are some people who say this is a hair tie. It's something she invented herself because she just wraps it around, but it's become, a major symbol for many African women who want to dress like her, who want to promote African culture. We're proud of you, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, and it was a great privilege to have worked with you in the same government at a time.
And Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, once again, congratulations, friend of the house. And like Dr. Abati said, you said it would take another long while for Nigeria to be on the face of Times Magazine. I think the last Nigerian that was on the front page of the Times Magazine was Tafawa Balewa.
Yes.
That was, I think, in '63. So that was the last time we had any Nigerian.
But there's more than one time cover, actually.
Yeah, there's more than
the influential list, there's several covers. So that's part of the joy. You go and you buy the cover that most represents you. So all Nigerians should go buy her cover.
And most importantly, Madam NOI, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, there are implications to this. That's all I'll say. Nothing more, nothing less. Dr. Abati, you concur?
I will help you explain it to her.
Yes. Implications. We can't come and celebrate.
Yeah, we're going to expect her to come from Geneva just to come and take a shebi because she has appeared on Time Magazine. Don't worry. Some of us will do the implications on our behalf.
That's all of you. So let's take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotu, Spiker, and Adesua here to give us updates on Africa Global Business COVID-19 spotting activities across the globe. Stay with us. Right back.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Now for Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Over to you, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. So it's geopolitics writ large this morning, really. That's the main thing. US bulwark against China, new security pact between Australia, the United States and the UK, and of course the UK political shuffle. But let's do the Asia-Pacific markets first of all. North Korea and South Korea have traded missile tests over the last 24 hours. condemnations flying thick and fast. That's weighing on equity markets in South Korea and Japan. Evergrande in China, big worries about that. We know that scenes of protests over unpaid wealth management productions to unfortunate customers. A lot of people wondering about what's going to happen there. Will it be a debt for equity swap? I suppose that's one way out of it. And basically, even though there was a fairly strong session on Wall Street, which I'll come on to, the mixed picture today as far as these missile tests and the geopolitical worries about China and so on, the Macau casino inquiry, Shanghai Composite down a bit. However, it is worth noting that New Zealand's second quarter GDP figures have blown expectations completely out of the water. So expect an interest rate rise there possibly next month. That's October. But by contrast, Australia's employment is down as a result of COVID and a result of their own isolation. 70 million people more shopping in the shopping online now in Southeast Asia. Prediction of 380 million people shopping online by 2026. So the US, Australia and the UK have unveiled a new security partnership as China is expanding its military influence. Now, there was no mention of China during these talks as well, but there's no question that it's important. Let me tell you why it's important. Because the US and the UK are going to help Australia build some nuclear-powered submarines, not nuclear-armed, but nuclear-powered. This is very important because it allows anything nuclear-powered and submarine allows it to remain underwater for years if necessary, and that's what's happening here. So that's a serious global navy being created as a result of all this. A senior Biden government spokesman played down that this was any special message towards China. Well, you can believe that if you want. That's what it is. It's a global navy being created. And let's keep going with China. We've got Martin Sorrell, who I interviewed only a couple of weeks ago. He's an ad mogul, obviously, huge figure in advertising. He's saying, ignore China at your peril. What he actually means by that, not quite sure. I think he means that we should actually keep taking notice of what's going on there. It's raised significant issues for his own new company called S4 Capital. It's a digital advertising and marketing company he founded in 2018. And he's saying that other companies that need to expand in China, wish to expand in China, should be extremely careful. And you remember, we had on this program, didn't we, George Soros saying, criticizing BlackRock for its inroads into China, saying it was pretty unwise. US recap then, Wall Street powering higher, basically, and that's not, though, reflected in the Asia markets, and the futures remain relatively flat. Let's talk about the UK political rejig that Boris Johnson is actually doing. This is about building back to better. This is what the actual thing is. I mean, to be absolutely honest with you, what are the standouts from this? So Liz Truss becomes the new Foreign Secretary after her relative success as International Trade Secretary, and she's the first female Foreign Secretary for the Tories ever. And only the second woman to hold the role. Labour had Margaret Beckett all those years ago. This rejig is continuing throughout the morning, and there'll be more stuff about junior and middle ranking ministers later on. The UAE is pledging to invest billions of pounds in UK infrastructure, clean energy and technology. I'm looking at a figure of 10 million, but we'll see. At the same time, you have to laugh at the irony of this. We were talking about it with Ruben yesterday, weren't we? About the UK postponing checks on goods coming into the EU until 2022. The government here is calling it a pragmatic move. Europe's really laughing about it, basically saying, but you said you were going to go on your own, and now you are, in a sense, and you're not having any checks on our goods coming into your country. Commodities. I take you to coffee this morning. It's quite an important one. Vietnam, what's going on in there could keep coffee prices relatively high. Brazil has seen waves of frost and so on. And COVID-19 restrictions in Vietnam are affecting coffee production, so that will remain relatively high. Oil prices leaping slightly higher. official crude inventories being slightly siphoned off, and the relentless rise in natural gas prices is helping oil as well. And gold flashing more danger signals is the headline I've got for it. Basically, I think what we're seeing is it's nothing particularly about it, but we're looking at the prices which it's been testing, and I don't think that they're going to be sustained. So you expect. What I'm hearing is that the oil price should go down. And briefly, the day ahead brings us US retail sales, which is the absolute big one. And in June, we expected to see a decline of 0.5%. In fact, we saw a gain of 0.7%. So it shows that consumer confidence is bouncing back in the UK. We'll see. And of course, I'll be talking about that with Reuters later on in the Global Business Report.
Okay, Michael, but something that is really increasing in the UK is inflation, and Andrew Bailey has to, the head of the BOE, now has to write it. I think he's written a letter to Rishi Sunak, telling him what is happening and the possibilities of what they can do. As Andrew Bailey finally come around to the fact that inflation in the UK, coupled with what is happening as regards drivers not being available, might not be transitory. And on the flip side of it, why is Andrew Bailey writing Rishi Sunak a letter? I thought since '97, the BOE is independent of the Chancellery of the Exchequer. So why is that the case? And secondly, why is Martin Sorrell saying we should ignore China at our own peril, where businesses are losing a lot out of China? Take, for instance, Didi Chuxi has lost about 30% of inflows because of the crackdown happening in China. What is Martin Sorrell seeing? Is this seen through formerly like the WPP crystal ball, or what is he seeing?
Right. So Martin Sorrell, first of all, what I think he's saying is, and remember, forget WPP. His new company is called S4 Capital. That's been going since 2018. He's moved away into this kind of digital advertising space. And he's seeing what everybody else is seeing in China, which is a fog as far as their regulatory practices are concerned. Nobody knows where it's going. So I think what he's trying to say, maybe two things. First of all, watch it. If you're gonna go in for risk and you're going to invest in China, be careful, because nobody knows where it's going. However, it is a big market. I mean, I brought you those online retail figures, which are going to be massive. And that's just in Southeast Asia. China is a huge market. So I think he's saying two things. It's like a double-edged sword, quite honestly. You were asking about the Bank of England and its independence. So what happened was that it set a nominal target of 2%, either up or down, as far as inflation is concerned. Should it break those two, the up and the down, the sort of symmetrical boundaries of that, above and below, then the custom and practice says you have to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Theoretically, the Bank of England is independent. It goes its own way. Now, do you think theoretically actually works in politics? I don't think it is. I think that what happens is there are various phone calls. When Eddie George was governor of the Bank of England, and the Chancellor was Ken Clarke. We used to call it the Ken and Eddie show. They used to sit down, have a cigarette, have a cigar, and have a chat about things. And then out of that would come interest rates up, interest rates down. Slightly more technical these days. Will Andrew Bailey be looking at the inflation figures? You bet he will be. And will there be disagreement amongst the Monetary Policy Committee? You bet there will be. And what will that disagreement be about? Same as it is with the Fed. If you worry about inflation and you start to raise interest rates, it's difficult, A, to turn back, and B, you risk strangling off whatever kind of recovery we're actually looking at now. And of course, we do not know what kind of recovery we're actually looking at now. So the easiest thing is to issue warnings and then do nothing. And I think that's what's happening at the moment.
Well, two quick things. Given the aggressive and militarist character of the new alliance, the AUK-US alliance that has been forged, and with Britain returning to South Asia and trying to assert itself in the Indo-Pacific, along with the US and Australia, are we preparing for World War III? Because it looks like under President Biden is uncomfortable with the advances being made by China. So do you think that we need to worry that this is some kind of preparation for World War III by another means? I know there will be other variables involved in that. And then as for the UK, yes, it looks like Prime Minister Boris Johnson has punished all those ministers who were making gaffes one after the other. Dominic Raab had to be pacified with the position of Deputy Prime Minister. How important is that? And then, of course, we have Liz Truss being promoted. We have Nadine Dorries being put in the position of Culture Secretary. Now, what is this all about? Is it about Boris Johnson trying to survive in office and hence, introducing some kind of reform of the cabinet? And finally, in El Salvador, protests, another round of protests. Would President Bukele survive this?
Well, first of all, then, El Salvador, I haven't a clue. I don't know. I don't know what goes on there. We know we've observed in the past about cryptocurrencies being legalized in El Salvador. Will the president survive? He might not. I really don't know. I think it's difficult to predict what happens in countries like that, which are so far from the kind of democracies that we enjoy. It's very difficult to predict it. I mean, one could raise all sorts of questions about it. Is it important? Probably not in global terms. As far as reshuffles are concerned, a great Prime Minister, William Gladstone, once said in this country, in order to be a good Prime Minister, you first of all have to be a good butcher. And that's what's happened here. Those who have failed have not done very well. I think what normally happens after this is that you get whisperings about when's the next general election going to be. I think the person in the street would be looking at these things and going, ho hum, so what? What's the big deal? I think that perhaps the most important thing is Liz Truss actually getting Foreign Secretary, because she appears, I say, to have done well as far as international trade is concerned. And if she's carrying that forward into the role of Foreign Secretary and increasing the UK's standing abroad, good. Are we preparing for World War III? No, we're not. Well, I don't think we're preparing for World War III. What we're doing is saying quite clearly to China, this is what's going to happen. This is a global navy being created. There's no question about that. The Australian submarines, they won't actually come into service probably until you and I are both pushing up the daisies. It doesn't matter. The fact is that these big powers are saying, look, if you want to rattle sabers, then we can rattle sabers as well. It's what we were talking about yesterday. It's how far away the finger is from the trigger. I think it's really important that this global navy is being created. We're going to hear a lot of cries from France because they were expecting to get the contract to build the submarines, and they're not going to get that. Australia is giving it to the UK and the United States and Canada as well. So it's doing it. But World War III, no. Cold War, yes. Whose fault is that? I ask you that question.
Well, on that note,
I know where you're coming from.
that rhetorical question, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now to our dependable Rotus Sadiri, who's here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. We kick off with Nigeria. This is now the third day in a row that we're talking about debts. Remember on... well, let me start with today and then we'll go backwards. Doing Salami, the chair of President Buhari's Presidential Economic Advisory Council has put out a report. You should be seeing the cover of the report, the states of the economy, and he's talking about debts. And again, so let me now backtrack. On Tuesday, we talked about the Center for Social Justice, breaking down the fact that Nigeria has spent 11.9 trillion naira over the last 5 years on debt servicing, as opposed to 8.3 trillion over the same period on capital expenditure. Yesterday, we talked about President Buhari writing another letter to the National Assembly seeking an additional $4 billion in borrowing and about 710 million euros. This is becoming barely 2 months after they approved $8 billion, which was supposed to be for the economic sustainability plan and a number of other things. President Buhari said it's for quotes, air quotes here, critical emergency projects. So now, Doing Salami has put out this report. Here's the chart. Here's the main chart, and we broke this down earlier in the week with the Center for Social Justice. But there's three things to look at here. So looking at this debt stats for Nigeria, what's alarming here is that if you look at the light blue bar, that's public debts. So you can see that light blue bar climbing all the way to 33.1 trillion. That's our public debt stock as at May 2021. We're now in September, so you know that number is a lot higher. The yellow line at the bottom there, you can see that going to 35.5. That is debt to GDP. And remember what the Center for Social Justice said in their quotes that I quoted on Tuesday, where they said, stop using debt to GDP. It's not relevant. You don't use GDP when you're calculating debt, when you're borrowing money. Stop using it. So anyway, that's at 35.5, which is sustainable if you're to compare it to other nations that are in excess of, you know, I mean, look at the United States, for instance, or Japan. Their debt to GDP is over 100%. But the key thing is, I don't know why it's in green. If I was creating this chart, I would have put it in dark red just to show how dangerous it is. But the green line, that's the one that Dr. Salami is particularly alarmed about. The Center for Social Justice is alarmed about. Everybody's alarmed about this. Look at that figure. That green line climbs to 97.7%. Debt service to revenue. That's the relevant ratio. And that's just for May. That's January through May of this year. So our public debt stock, I think his report, this is a 25 page report that he put out. He's saying that public debt stock will climb to 54 trillion, right? By the time you take into account the extra borrowing that we're putting in here, you take into account the extra money that President Buhari is asking for. Look, this really has to be an election topic going into 2023. I know there's going to be, we're going to have all the politicians in running for office coming on the show, on the morning show. They really have to be quizzed about debt, particularly how do you reduce debt? How do you increase revenue? Dr. Salami puts in solutions. We've got about $900 or so billion worth of assets that can be sold off. He's talking about blocking leakages. The number of multiple ministries, departments, and agencies. I mean, ask Ikeja Disco, which says that MDAs owe them the most money when it comes to power liabilities. So a lot has to be done here. This is huge because when you're spending almost 100% of your revenue on debt servicing, then you don't have enough on capital expenditure. All right, we move from that to the Department of Petroleum Resources, Oil and Gas. They've increased their revenue target for this year. Apparently, according to Mr. Saki Awalu, who you had on the morning show back in February when you were talking about the marginal field bids. He's saying that they had a 3.2 trillion naira revenue target. They've exceeded 70% of that, so they're increasing that revenue target to 5 trillion naira. If you're wondering where most of that money is coming from, it's probably coming from signature bonuses that are mounting from those marginal field bids. Now, he revealed this when he visited the executive secretary, or rather, when he went to the Abuja head office of the executive secretary of the Petroleum Technology Development Fund, Dr. Bello Gusau. So the DPR, they're feeling really good about themselves right now. We move from oil to mining. Dr. Uche Oga, who is the Minister of State for Mines, Steel and Development, he's calling for capital punishment for illegal mining as a result of Nigeria losing about $9 billion a year to illegal mining, and he's saying that, look, perhaps capital punishment has to be considered. I don't know about that. I don't know if that solves anything. Are you going to now use capital punishment to stop smuggling at the borders or other items? Perhaps that might be a good idea. Regulatory forces, and legal, security forces have to step into maybe to secure the mining industry, and also disincentivize illegal mining if you can. And then finally, Ghana. We end with Ghana. Ghana's GDP, Q2 GDP figures were released yesterday. Ghana's economy expanded by 3.9% in the second quarter of 2021. It was 3.1% in the first quarter of this year. It was they also had a base effect. So Ghana's economy contracted by 5.7% in the second quarter of 2020. Non-oil GDP is what pushed Ghana's growth. 5.2% non-oil GDP growth in the second quarter. It was 4.6% in the first quarter. The drivers, trade, manufacturing, ICT, crop production in agriculture, kind of similar to Nigeria. Huh? Interesting. That's our African business update.
Thank you, Rotes. The gold mining, gold smuggling issue is not new. It's been previously linked to Chinese personnel masquerading as construction workers. It's been linked to fueling banditry and terrorism in this country. What I'm wondering is that how we can get to a point with gold, who is buying this smuggled gold? How are we going to get to a point with gold that we got to with diamonds, conflict diamonds? You now have the Kimberley process. It's now such a huge issue to even be seen to buy blood diamonds. We need to get to that with gold because of what it's costing us in terms of the billions you cited. I read a report that it cost us $54 billion between 2018 and 2012 and 2018, $54 billion. And then the lives been lost due to that link to banditry and terrorism. How can we get to that point where buying smuggled gold is completely verboten, like it is now with blood diamonds?
You got to disincentivize. You got to increase security. You've got to disincentivize. Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, I was going to say Uche Oga seems to be changing his mind back and forth with regard to what he thinks Nigeria should do with illegal mining. In 2020, at a conference that he attended, he had said to his audience that the Nigerian government was proposing a jail term of 2 years without an option of fine, and that the Nigerian government would establish zonal courts to deal with mining. Yes, illegal mining, of course, is an offense under the laws, so he wanted a reform of the laws. But within 1 year, he seems to have changed his mind to move from making sure that there is no option of fine to the 2 years imprisonment that is stipulated in the laws to death sentence. Well, I hope that the Honorable Minister realizes that, that cannot be done by fiat. You will have to make a proposal to the National Assembly. But the bigger issue that we have is policy inconsistency. You recall that at the time in this same country, there was this point about making sure that artisanal miners, as they are otherwise called, and I think that this government at the point, step back from talking about illegal mining and talk about artisanal mining, and how artisanal miners, whether with regard to crude oil or to gold or to any other natural resource, could be integrated into the main framework. And those frameworks have been thought through over the years. Obi Ezekwesili at the time was Minister of Mines and Power and Steel, as they call it, Steel Development. Sharafa Ishola, who is the UK Nigeria's High Commissioner to the UK, also worked on that. There was Sada, Minister Sada, who was also in charge of that. And then there was Kayode Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State, who was also in charge of the ministry. Now, who is looking at all of those frameworks, all of those ideas that are already with government as to how to ensure, that mining really becomes a major target point for diversifying the Nigerian economy. So it's not enough for a minister to just come to the public and just pull something sensational out of his heart, and then we sit down here and we are analyzing it. Now, the other issue about GDP ratio, which is about 35%, I keep saying that the Department of Management Office, the Debt Management Office, DMO, keeps saying that, look, Nigeria is comfortable with 35% debt to GDP ratio. But what they're doing, Salami, the chairman of the Advisory Economic Council, has brought forward is that, look, this is unsustainable. This is unmaintainable, particularly as in real terms, our debt stock is about $54 billion, dollars, if you look at it critically, and that, in real terms again, debt to service, debt to revenue service ratio is about 97 billion. Now, I mean, if you look at the figures on the surface of it, it doesn't make sense. And that's why many Nigerians are always complaining about borrowing, excessive borrowing. That's why they're complaining about what we're doing with the debts. But I think we should focus more on some of those recommendations made by Doyin Salami. He's talking about, selling of assets, taking a second look at fiscal policies, blocking leakages and wastages, and all of that. Now, he's chairman of the advisory council. Is anybody listening to that advisory council? He made that statement on the state of the economy. But, it's not for us to worry about it. We are ordinary Nigerians. It's for government to listen to the same advisory council that it has established. So I think we should focus on those suggestions. But the question is, will anybody listen? Is Doyin Salami getting the right kind of assets? Is his committee, making any difference in terms of the interface with government?
And Rotus, real quickly, because time is almost up. Dead capital. We want to unlock ourselves and bring ourselves out of this madness going on with debt. Dead capital. Rotus, we have not started collecting capital on the abandoned Federal Civil Service building here in Ikoyi. Just imagine how much that will push in the economy. We have dead capital everywhere, and we keep keeping them dead. Wake up the dead capital, economy will boom. Boom, boom. Thank you, Rosus.
Well, Salami says collect tax too.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether that will sit well with...
Yes.
But that's inevitable.
All right. We didn't go on a break. Thank you so much, Rosus. We'll go on a break. We'll come back and we'll talk some COVID. Welcome back to the Morning Show right in the Rise News channel. Adeso Amara, great to have you this morning. How are you? COVID-19 update.
Very well, Rufai. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good
my goodness, Adeso, you planned it out with Tunde this morning.
Dr. Batson. Great minds think alike. But let's go to the COVID-19 update. More countries are issuing vaccine mandates and implementing vaccine passports as governments and scientists globally try to find a way out of this pandemic, or at least try to live with it. For instance, in France yesterday, vaccine mandates came into force for all the health workers in the country. Those who are not vaccinated will not be paid. A quick look at the numbers so far. According to Johns Hopkins University, COVID-19 has infected more than 226 million people and killed over 4.6 million others globally. Over 5.7 billion doses of vaccines have been administered. According to the WHO, there were about 4 million coronavirus cases reported globally last week alone, although this makes the first major drop in months. There have also been a decline of deaths globally, according to the World Health Organization. Here in Nigeria, official data release shows that the country recorded 229 new cases, a decline from the 519 infections recorded a day earlier. It also recorded 3 COVID-19 related deaths in the last 24 hours. Lagos posted 90 infections. The nation's capital, Abuja, reported a total of 3 new cases for the day. And vaccination against COVID-19 continues in Nigeria as well. 1.6% of the targeted population in the country have now been fully vaccinated. The NPHCDA says over 1.7 million people received the second dose, and this is as the country is expecting more vaccines to arrive. Any moment from now, Nigeria should be receiving the Pfizer vaccines. And speaking of vaccines, the European Union is pledging 200 million more doses to Africa and low-income nations to help curb COVID-19 pandemic on a global scale. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen used her State of the Nation address on Wednesday to announce the new donation. It is expected to be fully delivered by the middle of next year. However, let me remind you that the EU had previously pledged 250 million doses of vaccines, but is yet to deliver more than 20 million doses of that pledge. And Moderna is reporting a new data from a large COVID-19 vaccine trial that is yet to be peer-reviewed. The company says the protection of its vaccines wanes over time, especially among those vaccinated about 13 months ago, compared with those vaccinated 8 months ago. 13 months ago, those vaccinated were those who were in the trial before the global vaccination program was rolled out. The company says this now supports its case for booster shots. The period under review was July to August, when the Delta variant was the predominant strain in the world. And talking about the world, the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, says he doesn't understand why people refuse to take COVID-19 vaccines. The Pope, who is en route home from Slovakia, where he's been visiting, says even in the College of Cardinals, there are some anti-vaxxers he describes as negationists. He says he finds it very strange because children over the decades have been vaccinated against measles, mumps, and polio, and many other diseases, and no one said anything. So he's finding it strange that there's so much noise about the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, let me tell you finally that Trinidad and Tobago, the health minister in that country, Terence Deyansik, is criticizing as false the claim by American rapper Nicki Minaj that a person on the Caribbean island suffered swollen testicles after receiving a COVID-19 jab. Trinidad-born Minaj sparked the international backlash when she alleged on Twitter that her cousin refuses to get a vaccine because his friend, who was to get married, got swollen testicles and the marriage was called off. Other global health officials have since responded to her claims, describing it as false. They include Dr. Anthony Fauci of the United States, as well as the health secretary in the UK.
I mean, I think it's really important that those claims were quickly refuted because she has this huge reach. She has like millions and millions of people who follow her on social media. And as we were saying earlier, well, as I was saying earlier, vaccine hesitancy is so prevalent amongst the Black community, and that's the majority of her fan base. I don't know why people are comfortable repeating these stories of my neighbor's stepfather's son's dog had this experience, and you go and post that. It's unfortunate that she would do that. It sounds to me like somebody had an STD and had to lie and say it was from a COVID jab, because really, what do swollen testicles have to do with the COVID vaccine? I also want to share a story that Rotus just shared with me on WhatsApp, that China has vaccinated 1 billion people, which sounds really great and terribly impressive until you remember that it was China that got us in this situation in the first case. And also about the efficacy of Chinese vaccines. What is your take on the Chinese vaccine at this point? We haven't been talking about that much. And thirdly, Moderna boosters. So from what we said the last time we raised this issue, the AstraZeneca apparently don't feel that everybody needs their boosters. But if Moderna feels that they do, I think that advice should be heeded over what the WHO is saying, sort of general, that you don't need a booster vaccine. If the fabricator, the manufacturer of the vaccine says that efficacy tends to wane after a period, then that should not be dismissed.
Indeed, let me begin with China, Tundu. You know, we always say that there are not enough vaccines to go around. Some countries have been administering the Chinese vaccines. Some have come out to say, you know, immunity is not as strong as you would have in vaccines produced in the West. However, because there's a shortfall globally, they'll rather have that and, you know, plan ahead for booster shots than exposing their citizens to nothing at all. So the Chinese vaccines are being used in some parts of the world, including in Africa here. There are quite a few African countries that have been using the Sinovac and the Sinopharm vaccines. You would recall that even in Nigeria, they have been pledged. We've not been told if those vaccines have eventually arrived. China is vaccinating a staggering 20 million people a day. So it's not surprising to see those numbers. However, I need to verify if it's 1 billion people or, 1 billion vaccine doses that has been administered. Again, at a point, China was administering 3 doses of their vaccine because, again, of immunity. So when you calculate all of that, it might not come down to 1 billion people.
Well, Moderna, let's start with Moderna. You'll recall that Pfizer has full regulatory approval in the United States, and Moderna is the other, vaccine manufacturer that is asking for that. On September 1, Moderna approached the U.S. authorities to be allowed to administer boosters, third vaccine doses. And the whole argument is that on the basis of latest research, the data indicates that, yes, previously it was thought that the Moderna vaccine using a higher level of the messenger RNA will last longer than the Pfizer vaccine, Pfizer-BioNTech. But now they've discovered that after 6 months, the immunity level goes down. And what Moderna is now saying is that, look, if you apply a booster then of course it would enhance the immunity levels. So that's where they are. We hope that maybe they will get the approval. But you know, of course, in many countries of the world, in Russia, in the UK, in Canada, you know, there's that subject about, you know, taking the third vaccine. What is likely to happen is that, you know, across the world, we're going to just have to live with, you know, coronavirus, and people have to keep boosting their immune levels. And that's why the point made by Ursula von Leyen, the EU president, is relevant. Now,
European Commission.
if we take it you know, together, you'll find that the EU Commission is now promising 450 million doses. They promised 200 million previously by the end of this year. But out of that 200 million that the EU promised, they've only been able to make available to low and middle income countries just about 8% of that. So what do we take away from this latest promise of an additional 250 million doses that will be provided by the middle of 2022? And which is why the point earlier made by Tedros Ghebreyesus is important, that, you know, the developed world should not just make promises. It should act on its promises and deliver. Africa, for example, accounts for just about 2% of total, you know, vaccination rate, 1% of genome sequencing. And it's the, you know, the same kind of reality that you'll find in some other parts of the world, in Latin America, in parts of South Asia. Now, as for Nicki Minaj, I'm a fan of Nicki Minaj since her Anaconda days. You know Anaconda, so you can understand. You know, and also her talent and all of that. But I think she's now punching above her weight with 22.6 million followers on Twitter, and now trying to play the role of the scientist. I think that she should be called to order. It is good that the White House has arranged for doctors to speak to her. It is good also that Chris Whitty in the UK, the health minister in Trinidad and Tobago, has said she raised an alarm and wasted the time of the authorities in her home country. And it is good that Anthony Fauci has also said there is no truth to, you know, a claim about swollen testicles. She made another claim about a man who became blind because he had a blood clot in his eyes after taking COVID-19 vaccine. Well, maybe we should, you know, just appeal to this madam, as P.S. Morgan referred to her, little madam, as P.S. Morgan referred to her, to just focus on music, continue to make good music, give us good artistry, rather than going about looking for swollen testicles. I mean, why is she so obsessed with swollen testicles? You know, that in itself will promote vaccine hesitancy. It is the highest demonstration of, you know, the phenomenon that has been referred to as infodemic. So Nicki Minaj should leave testicles alone and focus on her music.
All right. Thank you so much, this one.